Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting set of articles this time, all looking at the circular economy.
Yeah, it's a concept that's, well, it's really picking up steam, isn't it?
Definitely. As a kind of alternative to how we normally do things, that whole take, make, throw away system, we want to break down what it actually means today.
Absolutely. I mean, for ages, our economies have worked pretty much like that, a straight line. You dig stuff up, make something, use it, bin it.
Simple, but not very sustainable.
Not at all. And the circular economy, well, it flips that script. It's all about keeping valuable stuff, materials, resources, moving around within the economy,
Yeah.
not just chucking them out.
Okay, so moving in a circle makes sense. What are the sort of main ideas behind it, the core principles?
Well, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, they're big players in this space. They lay out three main ones. First, and this is maybe the most important, is designing waste and pollution outright from the beginning.
So thinking about the end of life before you even make the product.
Exactly. Thinking ahead, how do we make this thing so it doesn't cause problems later?
Huh.
Then second is keeping products and materials actually in use.
Right, so not just recycling at the very end, but...
Yeah, reuse, repair, remanufacturing, refurbishment, all of those were words. And finally, recycling too, of course. The third principle is about regenerating natural systems.
Regenerating, what does that mean in practice?
It means our economic activities should actually help the environment. Put things back, improve soil health, biodiversity, not just take.
Huh. It really is a total shift in thinking, not just managing waste, but stopping it from happening and getting more value from what we've already got. So why now? What's pushing this globally?
Oh, several big things are pushing us this way. I mean, look at population growth. We're heading towards, what, 10.4 billion people by 2100?
Wow.
That alone puts massive pressure on resources. And those resources, many are getting scarce. Think rare earth metals for phones and computers, fossil fuels, obviously, even things like clean water in many parts of the world.
Then we're making more waste than ever.
Exactly. The World Bank reckons we could be hitting 3.4 billion tons of waste annually by 2050. It's just staggering. We can't keep doing that.
Those are some pretty stark figures. So for someone listening, maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed by all that, how does the circular economy actually help? What's the payoff?
Well, that's the encouraging part, really. It tackles these things directly. By focusing on reuse and recycling, you obviously cut down waste going to landfill, or worse, into oceans.
Okay, less waste, that's clear.
And often these circular ways of doing things use less energy, so you get lower carbon emissions too, better manufacturing, maybe using renewable energy. But it's not just environmental.
Ah, the economic angle.
Yes. It's a huge economic opportunity. The European Commission, for example, they estimated something like 700,000 new jobs in the EU by 2030, just from shifting towards this model.
700,000 jobs, wow.
Yeah. Plus, if you're relying less on digging up new finite resources and you have more diverse ways of getting materials, your economy becomes more resilient, less vulnerable to, global supply chain shocks.
So it's smarter economics, really. Better for the planet, better for the bottom line, potentially more jobs. Sounds like a win-win-win.
It really does have that potential, yeah.
Now, you mentioned Ireland is getting quite involved. We'll dig into that soon. But maybe first, could you give us a few examples from other places just to see what this looks like in practice globally?
Sure. Let's take fashion. Often get the bad rap environmentally.
Rightly so sometimes. Fast fashion especially.
Well, in Sweden, H&M has this garment collection thing. You
Yeah.
take back old clothes, any brand, and they sort them. Some get resold, some get turned into other things, and some actually get recycled back into textile fibers for new clothes.
So they're closing the loop somewhat.
Exactly. Reducing the need for new cotton, which, as you know, uses tons of water and energy. That's that keeping materials in use idea.
Okay, that's a big company trying something. What else?
How about electronics? E-waste is a massive problem.
Tell me about it. My drawer full of old phones.
Huh? Yeah. Well, there's a Dutch company, Fairphone. Their whole thing is making phones you can actually repair.
Repair. A smartphone. That sounds revolutionary.
It kind of is. They're modular.
Yeah.
So the battery, the screen, the camera, you can order a replacement part and swap it out yourself pretty easily. The phone lasts way longer.
That makes so much sense. Cuts down on that constant upgrading.
Right. And when you think about the sheer amount of e-waste, the UN said something like 62 million tons globally in 2024. Fairphone is directly challenging that buy new, throw away tech culture.
That's genuinely impressive. Okay, one more global example.
Let's look at something called industrial symbiosis. Sounds fancy, but the idea is simple.
Go on.
In Kalundborg, Denmark, they've got this cluster of industries. And basically, one company's waste becomes another company's resource.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
So there's a power plant. Its waste heat doesn't just go up the chimney. It gets piped over to heat people's homes in the town. And the ash left over from burning fuel, that goes to a cement factory to be used as an ingredient. It's about companies working together locally to close loops, sharing resources, minimizing waste overall.
That's incredibly smart, like a little ecosystem of industries. Okay, brilliant examples. So let's bring it back home. Ireland. The sources suggest Ireland's really stepping up in the circular economy space.
It definitely is. There's real momentum building. It's a mix of things, really government policy pushing it, businesses innovating, and communities getting involved too. And it all lines up with the EU's big circular economy action plan.
So what's the government actually doing? What policies are in place?
There's a pretty solid framework now. You've got the main circular economy strategy running from 2022 to 2030, and the Circular Economy Act from 2022.
The act that brought in things like the coffee cup levy, right?
Exactly. Levies on single-use items are part of it. But it also mandates waste prevention programs in different sectors. And there's a whole of government strategy, too, trying to get all departments singing from the same hymn sheet, focusing on key areas. Which areas are they targeting?
Big ones like construction, which apparently creates about half of all waste in Ireland. So pushing things like modular building, using recycled materials, also agriculture and food are major focuses.
Makes sense, given Ireland's strengths. So, beyond the laws, are we seeing this translate into action? Any standout examples from the sources?
Oh, absolutely. Food Cloud is a fantastic one. You've probably heard of them.
The food redistribution charity.
Well, they're a social enterprise. They basically connect businesses that have surplus food, perfectly good food, just too much of it, with charities and community groups who need it.
Tackling food waste and food poverty at the same time.
Precisely. And the scale is amazing. Since they started in 2013, they've rescued over 100,000 tons of food.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like 238 million meals, apparently. They have hubs in Dublin, Cork, Galway, using tech to match supply and demand really efficiently. It fits right in with the National Food Waste Charter goal, cut food waste in half by 2030. That's seriously impactful. What about that construction waste you mentioned? Half of Ireland's total waste is a huge amount.
It is. So organizations like the Irish Green Building Council are pushing hard for circular approaches. Think using more recycled materials, designing buildings so they can be easily taken apart later, designed for disassembly.
Right, so the materials can be reused, not just demolished into rubble.
Exactly. And you see companies like Roadstone actually doing it, taking old concrete rubble, crushing it, and turning it into new aggregate for building roads or new foundations. And then there's the Rediscovery Center in Dublin.
Ah, yes, in Ballymun.
That's the one. It's a brilliant hub. They renovated the old boiler house using loads of reclaimed stuff, and they run workshops teaching people repair skills, upcycling, sustainable living. It makes it all very real and hands-on.
A great resource. Okay, construction, food. What about textiles? Clothes, we must throw away a lot of those too.
We do. The EPA reckons it's around 87,000 tons a year in Ireland.
Good.
Yeah. But you've got places like Ruzi, that shop in Dublin focused on zero-waste living. They promote sustainable fashion brands, but also run things like clothes swaps. Simple idea, keeps clothes in use longer.
Community level action.
Yes. And it's supported by bigger things, like the National Circular Economy Program, run by the EPA. They back initiatives like the Community Reuse Network, that's the umbrella group for charity shops, repair cafes, recyclers, helping them work together.
So it's filtering down. What about farming? Ireland's agri-food sector is huge. How does circularity fit in there?
There's a specific bioeconomy action plan for that. The idea is to use agricultural waste or byproducts to create more value.
Like the industrial symbiosis idea, but on the farm.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
For instance, Arabon Co-op in Tipperary takes the liquid left over from cheesemaking.
Right.
Instead of it being a disposal problem, they process it into high-value ingredients for things like baby formula or sports nutrition. Turns waste into profit. Or down in Cork, Macaroon Buffalo Mozzarella. They use anaerobic digestion, basically, using bacteria to break down farm waste, like manure in tanks without oxygen.
And that produces?
Biogas. They use it to generate their own energy on the farm, cuts energy bills, reduces methane emissions, and produces a biofertilizer as a bonus. It's a neat closed loop.
Really innovative stuff happening, and it feels like there's maybe more interest generally in just fixing things instead of placing them.
Definitely seeing a rise in things like the Repair Cafe movement. There are groups in Galway, Dublin, other places.
How do they work?
People bring their broken stuff. Toasters, lamps, clothes, bikes, and volunteers with repair skills help them fix it, for free usually. It's about sharing skills, saving things from landfill, and building community.
Love that idea.
And the government portal, mywaste.ie, is actually a really good resource for finding local repair options or figuring out how to recycle tricky items. But there's a but.
Oh,
While repair cafes are growing, EPA surveys apparently show only about 13% of Irish households repair things regularly.
only 13%. That's quite low.
It is. Shows we still have quite a way to go in shifting away from the throwaway habit.
Which brings us neatly to the challenges. It sounds great in principle, but what are the actual roadblocks to making the circular economy mainstream?
Well, that low repair rate points to one: consumer behavior.
Mm.
We're just so used to convenience, disposability. Changing habits takes time. Education, maybe nudges like those levies.
And the systems themselves aren't set up for it.
Exactly. That's a huge one. Our existing infrastructure, supply chains, they're mostly built for that linear model. Think about packaging, logistics. Changing all that takes massive investment and coordination. It's hard.
Especially for smaller businesses, I imagine.
For sure. Redesigning a product to be easily repaired or recycled, setting up take-back systems, investing in new processing tech, it could have high upfront costs. Big companies might manage, but it's tough for SMEs.
And policy. You mentioned the act, but are there gaps?
Well, having the law is one thing. Enforcing it consistently across the board is another. And scaling up brilliant local projects, like maybe a community composting scheme, to work nationwide, especially in rural areas, that can be tricky too. Logistics, funding, consistency.
So, entrenched systems, habits, costs, and making policies work everywhere. Quite a list.
It is. But these are known challenges, and there are efforts to tackle them, like innovation grants for businesses, more public-private partnerships, continued education campaigns.
Okay, so despite the hurdles, the benefits must be worth chasing. What positive impacts are we actually seeing in Ireland already?
We are seeing some, yeah. Environmentally, the EPA data suggests overall waste has actually dropped by about 5% since 2018. That's something.
A step in the right direction.
And we're seeing lower CO2 emissions linked to circular practices in areas like construction, using recycled aggregates, for instance, and maybe less food waste emissions too.
And the economic benefits. You mentioned job creation earlier.
Yes, the Department of Environment estimates the circular economy already adds about $1.5 billion to Ireland's GDP each year, and that's likely to grow. Plus, the figure of around 10,000 jobs already created in these sectors, repair, reuse, recycling, the bioeconomy, is significant, and they expect more by 2030.
So real money, real jobs.
Absolutely. And don't forget the social side. Things like food clouds, the repair cafes, they build community connections, foster a sense of shared purpose around looking after resources. That's valuable too, even if it's harder to put a number on.
Definitely. So looking forward then, what's next for the circular economy in Ireland? And how does it fit into the bigger global picture?
For Ireland, a big focus has to be scaling up the things that work. Take that anaerobic digestion on farms. How do we make that more widespread? Support more farmers to adopt it.
Right, moving from niche examples to common practice.
Exactly. Technology will play a role too.
Yeah.
Things like AI or the Internet of Things could help track materials better, optimize collection routes, create smarter waste systems. Apparently, they're trying some of this in Dublin.
Digital circular economy.
Kind of, yeah. And staying connected internationally is key.
Yeah.
Being part of those EU networks, sharing ideas, learning from others, getting funding for research.
And globally. Is everyone else moving this way too?
The momentum is definitely global. The EU Green Deal is huge, aiming for a fully circular economy by 2050. That's a massive driver. But you also see big investments and policies in places like Japan, China. They see the resource security and economic angles too.
So Ireland's part of a bigger wave.
Yes, and because Ireland is relatively small, maybe a bit more agile, it could be a really good place to test out new ideas, new models, and show how they can work at scale. A sort of living lab for circularity.
That's a really exciting prospect. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main thing you want listeners to take away about the circular economy?
I think the main thing is that it's not just about recycling more. It's a much deeper shift. It's about fundamentally rethinking how we make things, use things, and value resources to build an economy that works with nature, not against it.
Right, decoupling growth from resource destruction.
Exactly. Yeah. Ireland's story shows it's possible. With the right policies, with businesses getting creative, and with communities getting involved, like Food Cloud tackling waste, or the Rediscovery Center teaching skills.
Yeah.
You can make real progress. It comes back to those core ideas.
Designing out waste, keeping stuff in use, Regenerating nature.
You got it, those three pillars.
It really does feel like, as Ellen MacArthur said, it's about rethinking progress. And Ireland seems to be doing just that, warts and all.
Absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination, right?
Right.
But the direction is promising.
So a final thought for our listeners. How can they get involved?
Well, just think about it in your own life. Can you repair something instead of replacing it? Can you support local businesses that are trying to be more circular? Maybe check out a local repair cafe or a clothes swap. Even just asking questions about where things come from and where they go. It all helps build that awareness and demand for a more circular way of doing things.
Yeah.
Every little bit really does contribute to that bigger shift.